The result, what transpired is that it brought embarrassment to himself. It brought embarrassment to his name. It brought embarrassment to the University of UCLA. And they felt the need to make sure to send a message. And as a result, they're willing to sit him down for a couple of months. And because you're going to sit down for a couple of months, you take this kid out of school, out of a program like UCLA, which was just in the NCAA tournament a few months ago. It doesn't make much sense to me. But it is his decision. He has a right to do it. It's really his son's decision, but his son is going to go the way of his father in all likelihood. And it's just unfortunate in my eyes that LaVar Ball has chosen to do this. But I'll talk about it more on my radio show today.
Look, he's going to be on the Stephen A. Smith show?
No, I will talk about it today because my show is in LA.
You're going to talk about it on your radio show today. When is that radio show? When can that be heard, Stephen A.?
1 to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Sirius XM Channel 80, 98.7 FM in New York, 710 ESPN LA, and as of January 2nd, nationwide across 250-plus markets throughout the country.
January 2nd?
There you have it.
That's when you become my opening act, Stephen A.?
You too. You too, Will.
LaVar Ball, that's right. Then
you'll have a good leader.
That's right.
You'll have a great leader.
It's a hell of a lineup.
You'll have a great leader.
Yeah. LaVar Ball is here to stay. Love him or hate him, you better get used to him. Because he has what business is he really in? Well, originally he's a basketball father or something like that, right? He has these kids who play basketball, and one of his sons is, drafted second overall. And so you think, well, it depends on how long Lonzo Ball can last. If he can play 10 or 15 years, that's how long LaVar will be relevant. I'm not so sure about that. People seem to be interested in talking to LaVar Ball, period, even apart from the fact, however Lonzo is playing. And he may have been around long enough now in the public consciousness that he's developed a brand that will outlast his son's usefulness to the media on the basketball court. And that's only if Lonzo doesn't last a long time, if he peters out right away because he can't hit a shot. But what if Lonzo's shot starts falling because the rest of his game's already pretty good and he's really young? Well, then he's around 10 or 15 years, and that's how long LaVar has to really create a kind of institution of his brand. What business is LaVar Ball really in? He's in the talking business, the same business we're all in on this show right now. And that business has a shelf life of basically forever. You can talk till the day you die, basically. And you can go as far as the presidency, apparently, right? He is a really kind of excellent promoter, and you want to call him a BS artist or whatever, fine. But that takes you a long ways, and it lasts a very long time. And I don't see his usefulness to the sports media any longer being exclusively reliant upon his son's success on the basketball court. I think he's here to stay.
Max, was the first thing you said that he's a great leader? Is that what you said?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. I thought, okay. I heard the rest of it. I didn't just hear white noise after that, but I thought that's what I heard. My mistake. No. I'd say, look, here's the thing about LaVar Ball. There's a decent chance that LaVar Ball is the cultural equivalent of Beanie Babies. There's a decent chance that we have 30 to 30 documentaries on, hey, remember that big baller brand thing? Remember LaVar Ball? There's also a decent chance that, Max, you're right, that he can somehow, primarily, I think, through the relevance of his son and most probably his oldest son, Lonzo, retain relevance so that we want to hear him talk. There's some chance of that. Here's my point. I actually like that about LaVar Ball. That clip we played when we came into this segment, and he says, I have no backup plan. I'm not going 80% one way and 20% another. I like that. I'm an entrepreneur. I've started 2 businesses. I mean, this career to some extent is entrepreneurial. I understand what it means to be all in. And I appreciate that about LaVar Ball. But that means you'll go one of 2 ways. You will succeed or you will fail. I mean, you will be all in and succeed, or you will be the cultural Beanie Baby. And that's great. Go for it. Swing for the fences. We're not here for singles. We're not here for doubles. We're here for grand slams. But there are things about LaVar Ball that, Stephen A., you're pointing to, that if he does stick around, that's not all positive. If he sticks around and he's here to stay, well, I got some problems with that, because one consistency LaVar Ball has illustrated is a total lack of accountability. His message to whoever's willing to listen is you're not accountable to anyone but yourself or perhaps your dad. Whether or not it's pulling players off of the AAU court, whether or not it's saying it's not a big deal if you get arrested in China, whether or not it's getting into a thank you match with the President of the United States, and now pulling your son out of UCLA. I mean, his biggest mistakes are lack of accountability and perhaps delusion. Because, I mean, if he pulls this off and all 3 guys are on the Lakers, well, that's great. But otherwise, no one thinks Jello has an NBA prospect. Woj tweeted yesterday, there's not a single GM that has Jello on their 2 rounds deep prospect list for the NBA. And he's pulling him out of UCLA, granted, who was never there necessarily to get an education, was always saying he was a one and done, but that's a problem of delusion. So I like him as an entrepreneur. I like his commitment. I question his sanity, and I question for sure his accountability.
Shamelessness can be very useful to one's own self-aggrandizement, as we see in our national politics right now. That's why I said that kind of stuff can take you as far as the presidency and can last forever. But leaving self-delusion aside, or shamelessness, which is, I think, a way to describe many of the kind of phenomena you were talking about in someone's personality, the idea that you don't have a backup plan, that you swing for the fences, in fact, can play whether or not you succeed. Because that's what makes him interesting, Stephen A., is that he is not, so often in your life, you are faced with these kind of choices, and so many of us have backup plans because we have reality, we have children and mortgages and bills to pay and a future to think of. And we are inspired oftentimes by seeing things that are outside of the realm of our normal experience, that kind of show us a side of ourselves we wish we could live out loud, right? And LaVar Ball does that. So whether or not he succeeds, the fact that he lives that way and talks that way, I think will be interesting to people for a long time.
And I can respect where both of y'all are coming from. I just come from a different vantage point. I'm thinking about the thousands upon thousands of kids who will try to emulate his behavior, or not just the kids, it's the parents. I'm thinking that they're thinking along the lines of, you know what, I might try to do this. And what may work for LaVar Ball and his family, they may not be able to pull off. And in the process, they may ruin the lives of their children along the way. I'm not proclaiming that that's going to happen to LaVar Ball and his children, because obviously he's done a hell of a job in raising them. Look at the young men. I mean, obviously, LiAngelo made the mistake that he made, but look at Lonzo and how he conducts himself. He's a very upstanding young man and somebody to be admired and respected in that regard. But there are going to be thousands upon thousands of kids and parents, rather, trying to live vicariously through their children that are going to feel like they've got the in or the okay to emulate such behavior, and that's not going to work out for them. Secondly, we've got the kids to think about here from the perspective of holding them accountable in this regard. They're not really kids. They're young men. And you would like to see them step up and make decisions on their own. Not only does their father make the decisions, he advertised that he makes the decision. He's the one standing up on, sitting down on the Today Show. He's the one in front of Chris Cuomo on CNN. He's talking, and he's talking for them. And it almost gives the impression like they're scared to step up and say, Dad, I love you. All the best to you. I mean, you're my father. You're taking care of me. I will love you for life. I'll always be here for you. But I got to make my own decision. I don't know if we've seen any evidence that they're capable of that. And you take into account how imposing his personality is, it brings into question how intimidating of a presence he may be with them. Well, and then you wonder about other parents out there who may have that same effect on their child. You got to think about it.
I think that's the more likely 30 for 30 years from now is LaVar's relationship to his sons and how it affected them than the Beanie Baby 30 for 30 will. I think that you have a good point, Stephen A. It may work out that way, but it may not. And as I said, I ain't raising his kids. He's raising his kids. And so far, if the biggest problem they face is a shoplifting incident, you have 3 kids, and by the time the second one's 18, the biggest problem you face is a shoplifting incident, I think most parents will sign up for that.
In China. Let's not act like that.
On
was
the moon,
at the CVS.
It's shoplifting.
It wasn't at the CVS in Brentwood. It was in China.
Yep.
Real quick, this puts a lot of pressure on Lonzo. Let's not overlook that. LiAngelo is, by all accounts, unlikely to be a big-time NBA guy. LaMelo is, 16,
He's
15? So we're far away from any kind of likelihood on that. So LaVar's entire relevance sits on the success of Lonzo right now. And that's, we'll see if he can support the whole family, because it might come down to that.
Yeah, and all I know is attending UCLA, playing 4 years on that basketball team, that national stage, would add a lot of value to his life. It's an opportunity a lot of kids would kill for that he no longer will have. Will, appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
We'll talk to you.